Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Lord of the Flies. By William Golding. William Golding wrote and published The Lord of the Flies in 1954. Golding's first novel was not a tremendous success when it was released, selling only 3,000 copies in the United States in its first year on the market before it was withdrawn from print. However, sales increased up later and it became a bestseller before the 1960s began. The novel has been turned into 3 films since then, the first in 1963, followed by a Filipino film in 1976 that had a cast that was gender-swapped, and the most recent in 1990. Several well-known authors and filmmakers have drawn inspiration from it and adapted it for their own works, including plays and radio broadcasts. An army jet carrying a troop of boys is shot down by the enemy and crashes on a deserted island in the novel's plot. The main character, a 12-year-old boy named Ralph, is the eldest member of the gang. His leadership of the group and instruction in how to build the shelter and hunt for food rapidly earns him the respect of the guys. One of the other older lads, Jack, develops a rivalry with Ralph for leadership of the group. Younger members of the group begin to believe that the island is home to a terrifying monster, and as a result, the group descends into hysteria and chaos, with Jack splitting off to form his own group. Ralph is left to fend for himself, while several of the other guys follow him. Under Jack's leadership, the other tribe turns nasty, and one of the boys is inadvertently killed when they mistakenly believe he is a shape-shifting monster in the middle of the night. On their way to assassinate Ralph, Jack's tribe is only halted by the arrival of a naval ship on the island. The tale begins with a little child scaling a rocky incline toward a nearby lagoon. When he finally makes it to the lagoon, he discovers that there is already another boy present. It's an overweight kid with huge specs. Ralph is the name of the young man with blonde hair who introduces himself. Piggy claims to be the overweight boy's name. The novel's plot begins to unfold when the two lads begin to converse. Over the Atlantic, the plane carrying the youngsters was attacked and shot down. When World War II broke out, a group of youngsters from England were brought by plane to the United States. The plane slammed into a jungle-covered island that was completely empty. After escaping from the plane wreckage, the survivors were unable to locate each other, and they are unsure if the pilot is still alive, as they have been unable to locate him either. As Piggy advises, Ralph and Piggy use the conch shell as a trumpet to summon the other guys. On hearing the shell, the remaining boys begin to follow and stumble towards the beach. Even the youngest of the lads, who are only 6 years old, are all under the age of 12. They are led by a child named Jack who is determined to continue leading them even in this unimaginable situation. 2 lines of people follow him onto the sand. The young men make a choice on their commander. Despite the support of the choir guys, the rest of the boys vote for Ralph. Ralph calms Jack down by explaining that the choir boys can be their prey and that Jack can lead them, to which Jack agrees. Ralph delegates exploration of the island to Jack and a third youngster called Simon, instructing the rest to remain on the sand. Exploring a jungle is thrilling for the boys, and they begin to build a friendship as a result. A large number of towering rocks can be found on the other side of the bush. Climbing the cliffs, the boys have a panoramic view of the entire island. Except for them, the island is completely void of human life. Ralph, on the other hand, is overjoyed at the prospect of finally finding their own piece of paradise. On their way back to the shore, they come upon a wild pig that has become entangled in some vines on the way up. Jack prepares to slaughter the pig, but he pauses. The pig manages to escape as Jack is preparing to act, and he pledges to never hesitate to kill again. A group of boys meet up at a nearby beach. They are all alone on the island, and Ralph divides them up into groups for the purpose of ensuring their survival. The conch shell will be held by anyone who wishes to speak at the gatherings, he claims. After a while, the others will have to wait their turn. As soon as Piggy realizes that they have crashed on the island, he begins to worry that no one will come searching for them. The guys are frightened by the concept. This morning, a small boy tells his older brothers and sisters that the night before he saw a snake-like monster in the bush and wants them to believe him. As a result, the other guys begin to worry about an ominous creature lurking in the bush. When the tiny child wakes up, the older guys try to reassure him there is no monster here and that it was just a bad dream. Ralph advises that they build a massive fire at the summit of the island's major mountain in order for passing ships to notice the smoke as a means of signaling for assistance. Piggy's glasses lens is used to focus sunlight and ignite the fire, which the lads all dash out to do together. They are able to start a fire, but it goes out very fast. The boys accidentally set a swath of trees on fire while attempting to restart the engine. When Piggy sees the group's lack of responsibility, he declares that the small child who saw a monster in the jungle is now missing. The boys are horrified, and Ralph feels guilty for what he's done. Assuming the youngster was murdered in the fire, they end up pretending that nothing occurred. A few minutes after this, Jack begins to follow his prey as it flees from him. Using a stick as a spear and a trail of it, the pig evades him time and time again. A frustrated Ralph returns to the beach where Ralph and Simon are busy building cottages for the lads. As Ralph struggles to keep the shelters up, no one save Simon is assisting him, and the other boys don't seem to understand how important they are to their survival. When it comes to putting the plans into effect, none of the boys, according to Ralph, are as enthusiastic as they appear at meeting. He is also concerned about the little ones who are experiencing nightmares and can't get to sleep because they're so scared. Jack is too preoccupied planning how he and his hunters would take down the pig to pay attention to him. In Ralph's opinion, Jack is abusing his hunting job as a way to avoid doing his share of the labor on the island itself. This leads to more heated exchanges between the two as Jack insists they must eat. A magnificent open glade with flowers and birds is discovered by Simon while this is going on. The pace of daily life on the island quickly settles in. Because the sun doesn't rise as early in the morning, it's much more pleasant for the boys to play outside. By midday, the heat is unbearable, and the sun glares down on the guys. Many of the young men are alarmed by what they perceive to be odd pictures floating in the water. According to Piggy, the illusions they are experiencing are simply that, illusions. After dark, they become frightened of their surroundings and retreat to their caves. Those with smaller brains are plagued by nightmares and weird dreams. They believe there is a monster on the island that stalks them at night. The boys' heavy fruit diet is making them ill, and some of the older lads are taking advantage of the situation to make fun of them. A pig hunting fever grips Jack and he covers his face with clay and charcoal before venturing into the bush. But when they get there, Ralph and Piggy find that the ship's signal fire has gone out. Despite their best efforts, they are unable to relight it in time, and the ship is unable to see them. This angered Ralph because he knew it was Jack's job to keep the fire going. It's just as he comes back to the shore that the hunters return with a dead pig. He intends to confront Jack about what happened. The hunters are too focused on their prize to notice Ralph's reprimands for putting out the fire. At this point, Piggy begins shouting at Jack and the other boy lashes out, breaking his glasses. In the end, Jack realizes he was wrong for allowing the fire to die down, but refuses to apologize to Piggy for his actions. Boys light the fire with Piggy's glasses and dance around the fire, singing a bizarre song and reenacting the hunt in jubilation. On the beach, Ralph declares he is holding a meeting and stalks over. He chastises the lads for not adhering to the group's set of standards. As far as I can see, none of the lads have done any labor to build shelters or gather drinking water, and they aren't even using the restroom location that they had agreed upon. Trying to get the guys to adhere to these regulations is Ralph's goal. Ralph and Jack convince the tiny boys that there is no monster, despite the boys' repeated mentions of their fears and dreams. One of the small boys tells them that he saw the monster, and they inquire as to where it could possibly go during the day if it is on the island. At night, he says, it could be coming up from the ocean, so they listen to him. The boys' gathering descends into turmoil when this suggestion is brought up. It's up to Jack and his hunters to find the beast and kill it if they find it, he says. Jack then walks out from the meeting with his pursuers without a word. When Piggy urges Ralph to use the conch shell to summon back the younger lads, Ralph worries that the call will be ignored and they'll learn that he is not in control as he looks to be. Simon and Piggy point out that the little boys would be lost without him as their leader, and he considers stepping down. On the island at night, a ferocious air battle takes place. The signal fire went out because the boys tasked with keeping an eye on it fell asleep. A deceased parachutist falls from one of the planes, and his chute snags on some rocks and flaps in the wind, obscuring the island below. Some of the lads mistake the body for the snake-like beast and race back to the camp to inform Ralph about it. The shape creates ominous shadows on the ground. The two lads tell Ralph that they were assaulted by a monster, and he arranges a rendezvous. After hearing the accusations, the other guys decide to form a search team to scour the island for monsters. The boys departed, leaving Piggy and the small boys stranded on the sands. Ralph and Jack set out on their journey together and quickly rekindle their friendship. It's time for Ralph to remind the other lads of the hunt's purpose when they begin to play. The guys reluctantly agree when he informs them that they would be traveling to the site of the signal fire in order to restore it. As the group makes its way through the jungle, Jack proposes that they go after yet another wild pig. In spite of Ralph's best efforts, they are unable to capture the porcupine. However, in the excitement of his first hunt, Ralph accidentally hits the pig in the nose with his spear. They replay the hunt with each other even after the pig escapes, with a boy named Robert playing the role of the pig. Unfortunately, the boys go carried away and inadvertently injure Robert quite a bit before they realize what they've done and stop. Using a real porker for the next reenactment is a suggestion made by Robert, while Jack cynically offers that they use one of the kids. Ralph clarifies that they were all just having fun. When the group isn't going back to the beach that night, Simon offers to go back and tell Piggy and the other kids to see if they can locate the monster before it becomes too dark. Ralph, Jack, and Roger make their way up the Signal Fire Mountain with another child named Roger. They spot the parachutist's shadow and rush down the mountain in terror, believing it to be a giant, unusual ape. In their second trip back, the lads hope to raise awareness of the monster among the beachgoers. If there is a monster, then Ralph should be kicked out of charge, argues Jack, wielding his conch shell. In contrast, the other guys refuse to vote him out of office. Furious, Jack walks off, telling everyone who would join him that he is going. Simon proposes that the boys return to the mountain to pursue the monster, but the boys are skeptical. Ralph agrees with Piggy's suggestion to build a new signal fire on the beach instead of using the existing one. The young men get to work on starting a new fire. Piggy informs Ralph that their group is better off without the other boys that sneaked away to join Jack's gang at night. A little distance away, on the opposite side of the shore, Jack takes charge of his new tribe and kills a sow with the help of his fellow hunters. In the jungle, the lads place the sow's head on a sharpened stake as a gift to the ape-like beast that they had seen. Seeing the blood trickling from the sow's jaws scares the lads, and they flee to the shore for refuge. To start their own fire, a few of the hunters raid Ralph's camp, stealing blazing sticks from Ralph's campfire. Ralph's lads are enticed to follow them to Jack's tribe in order to obtain meat from the sow when they inform them they can do so. That picturesque glade was replaced by the pig's head when Simon returned. Eventually, he comes to believe that he is hearing it speak as he sits there and stares at it. In the voice of the Lord of the Flies, it tells Simon that he can't escape him since he's in all of us. Simon almost passes out from fear. Afterward, he wakes up in a haze and stumbles up a mountainside with the signal fire still burning. It occurs to him when he comes upon the dead pilot that he has been mistaken for the monster. After a few stumbles, Simon makes his way toward Jack's fire to inform the guys of what he has observed. To keep the boys in check, Ralph and Piggy decide to attend Jack's feast. The lads eat the pig and laugh as Jack sits like a king, his face painted, issuing commands and being attended on by the other boys at the feast. Most of Ralph's supporters accept the invitation from Jack, much to Ralph's displeasure. Ralph asks Jack how his tribe would withstand the storm, given they have no shelter, as the rain begins to fall on the beach. The boys get caught up in the excitement of reenacting the hunt and dancing to Jack's hunting dance. In the middle of their dance, a dark figure comes from the forest and the guys, believing it to be the monster, fall on it and begin to attack. The figure, in fact, is Simon, who tries to explain to the boys that he is not the beast but trips and falls over a boulder as he flees them, killing him in the process. The storm ultimately bursts over the island, and Simon's body is washed out to sea while the lads flee for their safety. Screaming and rushing into the night, the boys find the parachutist's body strewn across the beach by the storm. In the early hours of the morning, Ralph, Piggy, and the few remaining tiny boys on Ralph's side convene to discuss the events of the previous night. Even though they now know they killed Simon, Piggy still maintains that it was a mistake. On the conch shell, Ralph laughs uncontrollably as he claims that they killed Simon in cold blood. Jack governs over his people with an iron fist atop Castle Rock, a mountain that has been called such. In addition to tying up and beating a youngster named Wilfred, he punishes boys for minor infractions. Eventually, Jack persuades his people that Simon was the beast and that the beast has the ability to transform into any form it desires. Because the beast can never fully be defeated, he tells them to remain on their watch. Jack's tribe decides to raid Ralph's group in order to obtain more burning sticks to make a fire. Ralph is heavily beaten by Jack's hunters and Piggy's spectacles are stolen so that they have the ability to start a fire. With the help of Ralph and his group, Jack's tribe is going to Castle Rock to hear Ralph's side of the story and see the light. Armed guards armed with stones are waiting for them when they arrive. With a dead pig in hand, Jack and a bunch of his hunters emerge from the woods and demand that Ralph leave his camp. Piggy's spectacles must be returned and the signal fire must be kept blazing if they are ever to leave the island. Ralph tries to persuade Jack. While Piggy tries to yell at them to stop fighting, Ralph and Jack get into a physical brawl. Rocks fall on Piggy, smashing his conch shell and sending him tumbling down the mountainside to his death on the rocks below. Ralph barely makes it out of the mountain alive. While the youngsters are playing on the beach, Ralph goes into hiding in the jungle and reflects on his own failures and how civilization has been stolen away from the boys. He comes across the sow's head and uses the spear to knock it over. A group of old pals tell Ralph the next day that Jack plans to have the entire tribe hunt him down in Castle Rock. When Ralph wakes up the next morning, the guys are still trying to find him in the thicket where he sought refuge the night before. Jack had set fire to the woodland to try and smoke him out, and Ralph notices this when he smells smoke. When Ralph finally makes it to the beach, he collapses in fatigue, knowing the other boys aren't far behind him. Ralph emerges from the bush. Ralph notices that a naval officer is standing over him and raises his head to look around. The officer explains to him that his ship had to change course after spotting the fire in the bush. When Jack and his hunters emerge from the jungle, they are halted in their tracks by an officer's presence. When the police first arrives, he thinks the boys are just having fun, but when he learns the reality, he is enraged. How could they have allowed themselves to become so vicious? The lads begin to weep as they are both relieved to be saved and ashamed of their past. The officer, humiliated, backs away from the youngsters so that they can take a breather. Ralph, the main character of the novel. The older lads on the island elect Ralph as their leader because of his determination to lead the survivors in reuniting after the plane catastrophe. The novel's protagonist, Ralph, serves as a metaphor for human growth and self-sufficiency. When the majority of the other young men are playing, having fun, and avoiding labor, Ralph begins building shelter and looking for ways to increase their chances of survival. As a result, Ralph maintains his position as leader of the guys throughout the first half of the novel. Ralph's hold on the gang continues to wane as the narrative goes on, and the characters increasingly give in to their wilder tendencies. All of Ralph's friends have either been slain or joined Jack's tribe, so he's the only one left. Morality and respect for human decency on the island run deep in Ralph's veins, as does his desire to return to the outside world and be rescued by grown-ups who will treat him with respect. As the narrative progresses, Ralph learns to realize that savagery exists in everyone and decides that he will not succumb to it, despite the fact that he cannot comprehend why some of the guys succumb to it. Because he was carried up in the hysteria, Ralph actually does hunt a boar and takes part in the killing of Simon, which brings him to the brink of despair. Ralph is relieved to be rescued by the officer at the end of the story, but the weight of what he has seen on the island and what he now knows exists within him causes him and the other lads to weep violently. Jack, the main antagonist of the novel. On his first day at the camp, Jack is an unruly troublemaker, arguing that he is better equipped to lead the lads than Ralph and frequently becoming so engrossed in the search for the first wild boar he neglects his other obligations for the camp. The novel's protagonist, Jack, represents the vicious and egotistical character of man. Rather than Ralph's more egalitarian tribe, he quickly forms his own and sets it up so that the lads follow him around like obedient servants and treat him as king. With no rhyme or reason, Jack begins torturing young men in his own tribe, which he then governs with an iron grip. Jack fails to murder anything the first time he's asked to do so in the novel, but by the book's end, he's killing and wounding without hesitation. This man is so consumed by his bloodlust and inner darkness that he wears a mask and pretends to be an outlaw. The more ferocious Jack becomes, the more influence he exerts over the rest of the group, which is eager to survive and sees him as their best hope. The terror of the ape-like beast helps Jack control the conduct of the boys and get them to do his bidding. Simon is a figure that embodies a spiritual connection to the environment as well as a strong sense of humanity's inherent goodness. With no adults around to chastise them, the other boys begin to lose their morals, but Simon remains upright and compassionate to all of the other boys throughout the story. This brutal act of violence against Simon, the book's friendliest character, represents the boys' demise of their goodwill, as their killing of Simon represents the death of all that they once were. While it is true that the killing of Simon sets the stage for an island-wide rampage of brutality, it also serves as a catalyst for this climax. Piggy, a tiny, pudgy boy with glasses who serves as Ralph's lieutenant or second in command. Although Piggy is a smart kid who often gets bullied by the other boys, particularly Jack, for being whiny, he is actually quite intelligent. Piggy, on the other hand, serves as a calming influence for the boys and comes to their rescue on multiple occasions thanks to his ingenuity. When a primitive boulder is pushed across Piggy, he represents the scientific part of civilization, which is wiped off. He was born on September 19, 1911, in Newquay, Cornwall to Sir William Gerald Golding and Lady Golding. Golding grew up in a scientifically minded household in Marlborough, where his father was the science teacher. His mother was a vocal supporter of women's suffrage as well. In 1930, Golding enrolled at Oxford's Brasenose College, where he graduated with a B.A. in English literature in 1934 with a degree in 1930. He made his debut as a poet later that year. When he was 39 years old, he became a school teacher and taught English and philosophy. When he married Anne Brookfield the same year, he had 2 children with her. During World War II, Golding enlisted in the Royal Navy and served as a destroyer ship crew member. Bismarck, Normandy, and D-Day were all places where he was involved in action. First published in September 1954, The Lord of the Flies was followed by The Inheritors, and then Pincher Martin. Golding continued to write after the war, despite considerable rejection from publishing houses. Golding was able to leave his teaching position and relocate to the United States to become a writer-in-residence at Hollins College in Virginia after he published a second novel in 1959. Golding published numerous novels and plays in the 1960s and 1970s. He earned the Booker Prize in 1980 and the Nobel Prize in Literature 3 years later for his work. For his work, he was awarded an honorary degree from the Royal Society for Literature in 1988. Golding died of congestive heart failure on June 19, 1993. There were only months to go before the first International William Golding Conference. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.